Hello, everyone, and welcome to our off-the-record collaborating remotely panel featuring three fantastic artists here. We have Rosie Banz, Ross, Leighton, and Rachel Sermanni. And we're going to get things started straight away. Just please introduce yourselves and let us know what you've been up to recently, maybe incorporating online collaboration.
Who do you want to go first?
Ross, go ahead.
Well,
you unmute first.
okay, first. Yeah, my name is Ross. I play in a band called Fatherson, and I also write songs for a publishing company called Reservoir. So recently, since the world ended, I've been writing a lot of songs on my computer with people, and it's actually been a lot of fun.
Nice, great. Rosie, do you want to go next?
Hello, hi. I'm Rosie Banz. I'm a songwriter and a music producer. And throughout lockdown, I've been collaborating so much online. I founded a group called Women Producers Meet and also started a project co-founder of Song Seeds online songwriting retreats, where we get songwriters together virtually and try and recreate that feeling of a real life songwriting retreat over the interwebs. So that's what I'm all about today.
Amazing. And Rachel, do you want to go next?
And yeah, I'm Rachel Sermanni, and yes, like the rest of you guys, nice to be in a square circle with you guys and sharing in the experience of being musicians and songwriters in this time. And yeah, I've had a positive experience. Like I've done a little bit of writing with people over the internet, a little bit, and it's been fun, like throwing yourself into that. And I've also two other things that I would say I would deem as remote collaboration is I've been making an EP with a friend who is a producer in Berlin. And so, yep, just doing that somehow. And also kind of see live gigs as collaborations because you're kind of getting involved with like the people who are watching. So I've done some of those live streams and love them as well.
Amazing. Yeah, everyone should definitely have a shot at live streaming if you've not already. It's it's difficult and there are so many technical hitches, but if you make it work, it can be really fun. So first, really simple first question that I'm going to give to Rachel first, because you were just talking about live streams there. It doesn't have to relate to that. What is one thing you avoid when collaborating online? What's something that you really think should be avoided to try and make the process go as smoothly as possible?
Yeah, I think one thing definitely to avoid, especially in this remote circumstance, but also maybe like in general, say with recording, in this circumstance where I've been like, I was recording in my shed in the garden with what means I had. And I had to kind of hand over everything to Finn, who's the producer. And I like to be like a backseat producer. So it was funny because really he was entirely taking the reins. So the thing I would avoid would be trying to be in control and trying to make things perfect. That would be a big thing. Just like you just have to let it flow, and then he'll send stuff back, and I'll be like, okay, that's not what maybe would have happened in the recording studio circumstance. But that's been really like cool actually to hear what he heard on his own. And I would also avoid cutting any corners when it comes to live streams. Avoid perfectionism, but also don't cut corners in the live stream. Try and make it as perfect as possible.
Yeah, amazing points. So perfectionism can definitely be a downfall if you take 10 hours trying to perfect this one song. You could have made a whole EP. So sometimes you do need to know when to get moving on the next project. Ross, do you want to also let us know if you have one thing you always try and avoid, especially when collaborating online?
I think that's a really good point you made about the perfectionism and being able to sort of hand the reins over. I'd had stuff to record at home before, but I never really got into it in the way that I did over the lockdown, because it's like there's no pressure and it's only you, so you can do like 10 takes on something and send it over, and it's not really as like maybe intense as it is in the studio. But I would definitely avoid closing things down, and also just running when you've got no steam. I think at the moment you always want to collaborate and be creative and stuff like that, but when you've got nothing to give because the world's a bit weird, you can just sort of drive yourself a bit deeper if you just keep running before you can walk. And in terms of the live stream stuff, I've done a bunch where I did it on just an iPad, and then stuff where I like set up a bunch of mics and stuff like that. It's mainly just about engaging with people. That's why you're doing it. You're not doing it as some sort of like ego trip. It's like, hey, I'm still here. How you doing? More than I have the best equipment in the world. It's more about, for me anyway, it's more about that sort of connection that you're trying to achieve when you're millions of miles away from people.
Amazing. Yeah, some of the favorite live streams I've seen through this have been extremely candid, silly things that have gone live on Instagram or something. But I do have other ones that have been really well produced, high production quality sort of stuff. So yeah, as you said, it's the connection that's important, especially in this sort of situation. So Rosie, do you have anything else to add to either of these points about things to avoid?
Yes, absolutely. I think they are great points as well, and basically avoiding being too precious over not just the work that you're creating, but also over the experience that you're having online. So for all of us, this is really unusual and can feel very unnatural. I think as a writer, you're quite used to being in the room and having a lot of vibes going on, and being able to feel each other sometimes without actually having to verbalize it. But when you're doing it online, your main mode of communication is going to be verbal. So my experience, I suppose it's less of an avoidance thing and more lean into who you are, and really like do a bit of work on where your strengths lie as a musician, as a writer, and as just a communicator, and bring that to the table. And if you do that, then hopefully it means when you leave the table, you won't feel underwhelmed or overwhelmed, because you've kind of already accepted that that's what you've got to offer. So it's just appreciating that it's human beings interacting on a very kind of unhuman digital platform. So I suppose that's my input, less of an avoidant thing and more to just appreciate the situation, kind of what Ross was saying there, that this is a very unusual time that we're living in, and we're still trying to create art, and that in and of itself is a beautiful thing to be encouraged and just to keep going. So that's what I would say to that one.
Yeah, no matter how good technology gets and how perfect everyone's internet connections are, you're still not next to someone unless you have some amazing hologram generator. But we're not quite there yet. Maybe one day we'll be able to recreate people in the flesh right next to us, but not yet. So we've talked about how we're collaborating online and what we're doing. How are we incorporating this interactivity over the internet? Do you guys use any specific programs, any specific apps? How do you facilitate your collaboration between people? Ross, I'm going to go with you first because you talked about producing for people.
So I discovered a thing. I went through a whole bunch of things. I had this thing called Soundflower that was working through Zoom that would kind of let you hear what was happening. Basically, I moved from that, I think, Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, whatever, some sort of like verbal communication. And then if you're using a digital audio workspace like Logic or Pro Tools or anything like that, there's a company called Audio Movers that for like $8 a month or what, £7 or something, you can put the output of your DAW and give that to someone else, and they can hear what you're doing in real time. So there's not like there's like 0.1% latency or something, and that allows you not only to, if you're writing on MIDI keyboards or MIDI instruments and that sort of stuff, people can hear exactly what you're doing and you can sort of collaborate that way. We actually, when we made the record, in sort of the middle of when you could do stuff, so we spent like 2.5 weeks in London and then came back and we've been mixing remotely through it because we can hear exactly what's going on in the session at that point. So I would say for me the biggest like benefit in Discovery was Audio Movers and then Zoom, and then it just allowed for me the most free-flowing creativity that I'd found online. I'd definitely suggest it.
Yeah, reducing that friction can be really difficult, especially when you're using audio programs that require this sort of, exclusivity of all your audio devices. And that Audio Movers, I'll probably check it out. It's sounds a lot nicer than having to run wires back into my interface. Yeah, great. Rachel, do you want to hit us off next?
Yeah, that was very cool advice. Thanks, Ross. Yeah, like I think I've seen, it wasn't me who was getting the mixes in real time. Actually, I was doing one thing where I used that program, or the producer was using that program, and it was really cool. It was really cool to hear something in real time and to have access to like a quality sound, at the same moment from different places. So that was, I did have that experience, but I haven't actually entered into that world myself. And in terms of like incorporating the interactivity, I'm a little bit slower and like clunky. So for a good period of time, actually, the laptop that I'd got specifically to record on, when I realized that like I was going to be the studio, I decided I'd buy a laptop that was specifically for it. I called it my studio. And then I discovered classic secondhand laptop that there was like an issue with the internet. So I had to then I would record to Logic, and then I had to figure out how to like pull all the tracks off Logic, put it onto a stick, and then put it into my other computer, and then upload it, and then transfer it to Finn. So really slow. So I can't say that it's definitely been a learning curve, and I've got better at it, and I have since got my laptop fixed. So that's like something I've thankfully don't have to do anymore. But yeah, it was a lot of that for me in the beginning of like, oh my gosh, like I'm not very good. I had this belief about myself that I wasn't very good at technical things. And in a sense, I kind of I maintain that like I do mainly write and record with like acoustic instruments, for example. And I don't have massive knowledge in recording. So I kind of quite like that, and just have taken that on board and seen that as part of the naturalness of the process of recording remotely. So yeah, no fancy programs for me. And I actually, in echo of what Ross and Rosie were both saying, I've just, in terms of interacting with other humans, there's been a lot of just more social media and interaction. And when I said about cutting corners, actually, that was like for a fancy stream. Whereas, people mainly just want to be seen as well. Even if it's you're the only person in the screen, you can still like make them be involved. And actually, social media, with all its issues, has been very lovely in that sense. You can create this sense of community, and live streams have been handy for that. So that's what I'd say.
Amazing. Great answer. I'm sure a lot of people have been going through the same thing, having to fumble with technology, and even those who know technology well are having to completely rethink the way they would work. So it's something everyone's, especially for music, it's something everyone's gone through. Rosie, have you got anything to add to this?
Yes, yeah, and you're right. Like, we've really been hit with this new way of doing the job that we've all been doing for so long, and how are we going to do it in these circumstances? And I love that Rachel shared her story there, because I think it does just go to show that it's about the results at the end of the day. So it's about the result of the collaboration. It's not actually about the collaboration in and of itself. Is whatever way you get to that result, it's fine, it's your way. And if that means it's on a stick and then it's Dropbox, then it's this, that's the flow that you're in. So for me, that interactivity with each person and each collaborator has been different every time. So like at the start of lockdown, everything was on Zoom, everybody was on Zoom. Zoom became like this standard way of now communicating. And what I started noticing was the fact you can see yourself as you're talking. It's really weird, it's really unnatural, and we're all like budgies. We're all looking at our own faces as we're talking. We're not meant to see ourselves as we're communicating. We're meant to be able to just communicate like one channel, so I kind of started coming off of Zoom, because I was finding that there was maybe a portion of my brain that was actually just, and so the actual medium itself was getting in the way of the collaboration. And recently, I've went back to phone calls. I've went back to collaborating with people over the phone, and maybe using a Google Doc. I found Google Docs really, really handy and useful, that you can both sit, if you're working on lyrics or something together, and you can just like edit as you go. But keeping it audio for me so I've kind of like went into the technology and came back out and remembered that this is essentially an art form for the ears, and let's just keep it like that, even if we are hundreds of thousands of miles apart. So yeah, I use Zoom, Google Docs, voice memos, shooting people voice memos across my phone, some really crude stuff. But like I said, it's about finding a flow for me, and with that person too. So maybe if I was to work with somebody like Ross or Rachel, they might come up and say, look, this is how I do it. And for me, that flow is, well, how can I work with you in that space? And so far as a producer, I've not done any real-time mixing sessions yet online. It's all been again, like before the COVID times, where you would have a rough bounce sent over and you get your notes back and things like that. So that's where I'm sitting just now with using interactivity or using the technology to interact. But I think a good phone call, man. I think we forget the power of a good phone call sometimes, and we're all on Zoom. So that's how I'm feeling. Bring back the landlines.
Do you think that
No, go ahead.
With the remote collaboration, something that I actually found to be super useful was, like, see if you're on Zoom or you're on the phone and you're pinging ideas back and forward, I actually quite like the ability, which you don't get in the room, is to go like, I'm going to call you back in 20 minutes. I'm going to have a think about this, and I'm going to come up with my idea, and then I'm going to come back, rather than being like, especially if you're in sessions with new people and like there's no one knows what the expectation is of where the song's going to go and what's going to happen and stuff like that. Actually having that little, that's what I've enjoyed, like to be able to go down and have a cig and make a cup of tea and have a think about what exactly is happening, and then 15 minutes later going like, right, I've got an idea for where that could go, which never happens, because if you're in a room with someone, you're like, I'm going to leave for 10 minutes, to go like, that's rude. It's like, no, like it's not meant to be rude. I'm just needing, actually enjoy the collaboration and the separation. Maybe even more than I enjoy in the room sometimes. Which is an interesting thing I've learned over this period.
I agree with you so much. Like, when they say, oh, my best ideas come in the shower, you can literally switch off Zoom, go for a shower, and come back to your Zoom call. And like, I think it's brilliant. And maybe when we do go back into the room, we can understand that a bit more, that our creative processes are so unique and constantly evolving that we can't always put that. Sometimes in the room there's a lot of pressure to come up with it before the end of the session, and if it doesn't happen, it feels a bit like a failure. Whereas doing it this way and being able to kind of give and take, you're always in the room alone though right now. That's the difference, I suppose. You're never actually with the other person. So it's very interesting, but that's a great point, Ross. I agree with you on that too.
Yeah, there's a lot less hard drive fodder happening right now. If it doesn't happen in 6 hours, then it lives on someone's hard drive and nobody ever sees it go. But that was maybe the best chorus I've ever written. And folk go, I didn't finish the song, no one cares. It's like, oh, brilliant. Like, this has been, I've actually really enjoyed this sort of like mishmash.
Yeah. It's always nice when you jump into one of your old projects and just decide to rip choruses out of things and jam it into new projects. But now I feel like things are starting to actually, since you're only working with yourself, stuff actually gets finished quite a lot of the time. Sometimes, maybe like 20% of the time. So now that we're online, we're kind of creating through limitations. Has the current situation made you rethink physical barriers of people you'd like to work with that you would have never thought about working with before? And have you been more adventurous in working with individuals from further afar? I know, Rachel, you mentioned you were working with someone from Berlin, so let's open with you.
Yeah, I can't even remember. So I've known Finn for a long time. He's in a band called Think, and I toured with them across Europe when I was just beginning. And when this career of mine was just beginning. So I was around, I think I was 18, and he's remained a bit of a big brother to me. And it was strange that of all times, this was the time that we decided we were going to collaborate and that he was going to get involved. He had always shown interest or whatever. And yeah, so I can't even say whether it wasn't necessarily like entirely instigated by lockdown, but the method of how we were going to do it was. And yeah, like it's shown me, it's sort of been empowering to an extent, because it shows me that certainly working with particular people, the right people for me, which he has been amazing with the fact that I was recording in a shed, or I did one of the songs in this room. And to anyone who knows about Sonics, it's not like the best sounding room, but I just padded it with sofa cushions, and really it was empowering, because like I guess you think that's not good enough, but the result that we've got, and obviously it's flying over to a studio in Berlin, but the result has been cool. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but I think that the experience of having very little means and still working with somebody who I regard as successful with a fancy studio or whatever, is still possible, is cool. And also, I would say, I don't know if this is kind of a tangent, but like with this time of lockdown, the fact that none of us are performing, and I know that I'm one of those people who really likes performing, and I'd love to hear from Russ and Rosie if that's something they like to do. And I've missed that, but I've also recognized that a load of where I got my sense of self-worth existed there. So I've really had to do work there. And in that sense, there's been a lot of empowerment in not doing them as well, because I've had to like build myself again, to do some rebuilding and rewiring. And with that also comes confidence with reaching out to fellow artists or people. So yeah, like I can feel that like I would be actually more confident in reaching out, but not necessarily right now. Not necessarily right now. Would I be, can I think of anyone who like, oh, they're next on the list? So there's nobody right now. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people can get bogged down in the gear stuff, where they're like, oh, I don't have the right gear. I'm gonna, like my monitors, they're not good enough, or this mic I have is trash. It's like, there's so many artists that are still going to use the trash, and they'll still make amazing stuff. It does not matter what you have. You can make music on anything, and there's no such thing as bad music anyway. So you may as well get started at some point. Rosie, do you want to take over next?
Yeah, sure. I love the like anecdotal wee bits in the background that you hear a record maybe you've known for years, and then you read in an interview that, oh, that was actually the sound of sausages in the frying pan, but you thought it was rain on the window, and it all was like, anyways. So I think that's actually great. In terms of like limiting physical barriers, it's been amazing this year. I mean, I've been really, really lucky in finding 2 amazing mentors to help me with my career. And one of which is a guy called Steve Farris. Shout out to Steve, who's a legend. But he's down in Brighton, and we meet on Zoom calls. And I just don't know if I would have reached out to someone like him to be a mentor before lockdown happened, and it all been okay. And I don't know if he worked that much online either. And when it comes to music and collaboration, I've been working with some producers over in the US, which that all came through lockdown. And through, like, again, what Rachel was saying, I think this is for those of us who are privileged enough to not be living on the poverty line and to actually take advantage of the space and the time that lockdown creatively has actually given us. And to really dig into that, which I think is a beautiful thing that we've all managed to do, regardless of the state of the arts on the other side, but as individuals, that it means that my career's taking a bit of a curve, and I'm going into spaces that I would never have been thinking about before, like writing for sync and TV and film. And so I was needing some help from some producers, and I just joined a group on Facebook, put a question out, and ended up on a Zoom call with this guy in America a few hours later, who really helped me with my beats. I'm struggling with my beats, man. If anybody's watching and can help me with my beats, please get in touch. But that was amazing. And I thought, wow, like, I'm talking to this guy I've never met. I've got a new contact. He's a really beautiful, giving, generous soul as well, which can, as you know, maybe be a bit hard to come by sometimes. So for me, it's really broken down, I suppose, what we can offer each other as well. That when you meet face to face and in person, you're always in a situation. You're in an environment of a kind, a studio or at a gig, and you've got a role to play. Whereas because all that's been taken away, there's almost been a wee bit of a levelling and a playing field that we can access people's time from, which I think has been a really beautiful thing. So for me, it's worked, and definitely more adventurous.
Amazing. Yeah, great points. We're running out of time a little bit. We're a little bit pushed for time, but we'll quickly get Ross's input on this question, and then we'll move to our final closing point.
I think what you just said there about a levelling is an amazing way to say it. I think there's, as much as I would like to think that music is a collaborative, wonderful space where everybody is out to help everybody else, there's an immense amount of competition in it. And there's an immense amount of like difficulty getting, so you're like, maybe I want to do a session with this person, and then you chap the door and you chap the door and you chap the door. I found that when the lockdown happened, a lot of the doors I've been chapping for years started to open because no one had anything to do. And the results were actually really good. And came out with like, oh, we should have done this ages ago. And it's like, yeah, we should have. But I think the physical barrier thing has made me question travelling for sessions. It did the first couple of months. Now I'm getting a bit bored of like being stuck in the house, so I will happily travel for anything. But yeah, it sort of like allows you to do this initial meeting that's always odd, and you get to get that out of the way, and then at the end of your 5 or 6 hours, you get to go, no, I really enjoyed that. I'd love to meet again. I'd love it to actually, I will come to London for a couple of days and we'll do some sessions, or I'll go to Nashville and do some, you know, so it's sort of like, it's almost like it allows both of you to filter that to make sure it's going to work for you, because there's nothing worse than traveling 18 hours and getting to somewhere and it's just like, and you come away with a bad half chorus and you're like, you're better than this, I am better than this, we should have just went for a pint, this has been a nightmare. You know, so I think that sort of, I really enjoyed that, for being like, I really think I want to work with this person. And then you work with them and you're like, oh, that didn't really go the way I thought it was going to. But I didn't think I really wanted to work with this person. And I've now written 10 songs with them. So I think it like that level on the playing field, just going like, what are you doing? I know you're doing nothing. So let's just, we're not going to waste an afternoon. You're either going to watch Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares or you're going to try and write a song. And if you try and write a song and it comes out of class, you've made a pal for life. And if it doesn't, who cares? You're just going to be staring at the window anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to throw stuff, spitball, and try and hope it ends up good. The more, it's a numbers game. The more you try, the more likely you'll get something out there. And
just make music. Music. It's class.
Yeah, it's just making music.
Even making bad music is class. Because you come away and you go like, well, at least I made a bad song today, so fingers crossed I make a good one tomorrow.
So our final point, I must sadly move us on. I'm sure we could talk about that for hours. I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds for your single most valuable piece of advice to give to the people listening to this panel. So, Rachel, let's start with you. Single best piece of advice.
Okay.
Go.
Okay. So in terms of like being on the internet and being on the line that we all are, and it is a very level thing, and exactly what Ross said on the front of connecting. This is a time for connecting with people, very, very much so. And also, this is a time for dreamers. So you've got to dream, and like we've got to start creating stuff and keep creating stuff, because yes, the art is a bit fecked, but it's all right. Because we've just got to keep dreaming, because there's lots upcoming, and the more creative people keep feeling empowered to be creative in every way, and online is the way right now, then dream on.
Yeah. You can't let a little deadly virus get in the way of your dreams. Come on. Rosie, you seem to enjoy that point, so you can go next.
I love that. Rachel, I need to record that, play it every morning to get me going. I would say for those watching, so 16 to 25-year-olds, like it can be really daunting collaborating, never mind online, but just to keep in mind, like human beings we're only here because of collaboration. It's absolutely inbuilt in us. So it's okay to do it. And we're nosy, be curious. So you will meet the right people if you just ask, and you will get probably a wee bit rejected here and there, but you definitely will attract the right people towards you. So just go for it. That's my advice.
Yeah, no one's going to know about you unless you put yourself out there. Ross, finish us off with a lovely 30-second point.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree completely with that. Don't be afraid. Like the worst thing that someone could tell you is, no, I don't want to write a song with you. They could also tell you, I don't want to write a song with you because I think you're rubbish, and that would be terrible, right? But in reality, you don't get. And if you don't just open yourself up to the possibility, you sit there going like, oh no, nothing's happening. It's like nothing's gonna happen if you don't want to make it happen. So fire messages to people all up and down the ladder, like Instagram, just message them or tweet them, if that's what the kids do these days. Just get involved and be like, I write songs, I think your songs are cool, let's write some songs together. And fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's never going to work unless you at least try and contact whoever you want to work with. It's definitely worth an email. The least they can do is, as you say, not reply or say you're rubbish. I'm sure you'll get over it in a day after a bar of chocolate. So I'm so thankful that we managed to get through this collaborating online panel. Thanks so much to the speakers. I'm sure you've all enjoyed their insights.